since I've been to your country. And, you know, life just has its own way of doing things, you know. And if you learn to sort of go along with it, instead of fight against it, eventually the right thing happens. And the right thing is that I'm here tonight in your school with all of you, and I can tell you this feels absolutely amazing. And I hope that that this is the beginning of a relationship and friendship that will last as long as I'm alive. Because this feels like home to me. You know? You're such good people. And even my first experience with all of you and being in this legendary school, the feeling of friendship and that you guys really love one another. You know, and you realize.
I don't know where it is.
Except for you.
Jack, Obama is loyal. Don't know.
But see, you look out after one another. You know, just like the award, the third-degree black belt that you did tonight. You know, you do things for the right reason because it's the right thing to do, and that's the difference between being a martial artist or being just a martial fighter. You know, we can teach anybody how to fight. But how do you teach them to be a good person? How do you teach them to be, from the inside, grace, beauty, humanity, care for one another? That's what we're supposed to do as martial arts instructors. We're supposed to send that message, not just the message of, oh yeah, and by the way, I can beat you up. That's important, don't get me wrong, but and especially for Kempo. But there's the bigger picture, the greater picture of the humanity of what we do. And that takes me right to a wonderful guy that we all knew and who had such an impact on our lives, and that was Ed Parker. Because certainly if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be here. Here's our moment that we reflect on. You know, I'm not very good at looking back. You know, I'm not a look back, I'm always moving forward. And solving problems and going ahead and thinking of it. And every now and then, a moment like this happens that makes me stop and really drink in the humanity of who we are and what we do. It makes me thank Ed Parker for the opportunity of being here and sharing this all together with you. So I think it's with that framework that I'd like to move forward. You may have heard that there's a version of Kempo that we do called Kempo 5.0, which means there was a 4.0 and a 3.0 and a 2.0. That's where 5.0 came from. But I just want to explain very, very quickly what it's about. Anytime you want to ask a question, please raise your hand, because I'll tell you what I think is important, but you may not care, you know. If you have something you'd like to ask, it's open anytime, okay? Promise to do that for me? What happened here is the preeminent self-defense system in the world, American Kempo, what we call Kempo, it lost its place as the top spot after the Gracies came in to America in 91, to Japan in 93 or 4, and brought their style of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in, which morphed eventually into what we now call MMA, mixed martial arts. And because of that reality, now and here today, we, as Kempoists, have to address that problem because it's so prevalent. I'm not sure how big it is in Ireland yet. It's going to be huge. It's enormous in the United States. It's absolutely incredible. Guys are buying the DVDs, they get together in their garage and they just beat each other up and they have no respect, nothing. So here's the question that's relevant today. If you're out in a pub having your cookies and milk, and some guy comes up and picks a fight with you, and you're going to step outside or do it right there, today, what are the chances that he's going to take me to the ground and have some of that training? Let's just be conservative and say at least 50%. There's a 50% chance, especially as big as I am, to have some guy come up and pick on me. We're probably going to the ground. If I don't have an answer for going on the ground, there's one truth that's going to come out of that fight, and that is I'm going to lose. So for over 3 years now, I've been a jiu-jitsu student with a phenomenal guy in the States. In California I visit. My students are competitive MMA cage fighters. They're also many, many years in jiu-jitsu. So this is a mix. So when I talk about Kempo 5.0, I talk about we. You know, I never take ownership of it. I never say, I did this, I did that. I say we did it, because everybody got together and we did this collectively as a group. So here's what the answer is. The question, define the question. I think so many times people ask questions like, who's going to be the next Ed Parker? My answer is, you're asking the wrong question. There's never going to be another Ed Parker. He was a unique, extraordinary person. Stop trying to impersonate him. Be your own person. Learn the wisdom from him. Learn the art from him. Let it move you. Let it change you. But be you. And see what you can do with your life instead of trying to be in the shadow of somebody else. That's the wrong question to ask. The question here is, how are you, a Kempo person, going to do your Kempo, what you do on the ground, with a guy on top of you who knows what he's doing? Either a jiu-jitsu guy or an MMA guy. They're a little bit different, but they got a lot of crossover. So, Kempo 5.0 attempts to answer that question. There's no place that I'm going to go on the ground with somebody that I don't have an answer now. That wasn't true before. I had 0 answers before. I didn't know what it was. And my ignorance set me up to be a wipeout. That guy would just trash me, and I know it. Guy half my size would do it. So here's what we did. We went out and reached into that world and learned what it was. Reached into the MMA world, learned what it was, brought those things together, and then addressed them from a Kempo perspective. This is not, and this is important, this is not Jiu-Jitsu mixed with MMA. It's not Jiu-Jitsu mixed with Kempo, it's not MMA mixed with Kempo. This is Kempo on the ground. How did we get to the ground? How do you get back up? And a lot of what I've done, look, I'm 54 years old. In the best case scenario, I'm more than half dead. You know? I'm 3/4 of the way through with my physical Kempo life in the best case scenario. Okay, so I'm not going to go into a jiu-jitsu competition and roll on the ground for, those are 10-minute rounds. I got about 2 minutes, and then I'm done. You know? I become the other white meat in about 2 minutes. But I get into my jiu-jitsu class. And I put on a white uniform and a white belt, and I get out there and I get trashed every time because I want to know how those guys are going to hurt me. And then I want to create answers of how does my Kempo work against that guy. But in order for that to happen, I have to understand what's a closed guard, what's an open guard, what is a guard, how do I escape from that? When I'm on my back and I've got somebody like this, and he starts moving around to the side and he gets past me, what is he doing over there? Where's he going? You're going to find out where all of a sudden it goes crack, and then you go, oh, okay, now I know what he's doing over there. You're going to find out too late. I got to know, what are you doing over there? So I can counter that move. Because he's going to set up a series of mouse traps. He's going to open the door, and I'm going to go, oh, God, that was good. And then I'm going to go there, and all of a sudden it's going to be bam! And I'm going to be done. Because those guys have, like we do, they have no mercy. You think because there's no striking in jiu-jitsu, it's not a brutal art? Don't get in the hands of a jiu-jitsu guy. You'll get knocked up all over the place. I don't want to be a jiu-jitsu guy. I just don't want to lose a fight in the street. So, we melded these things together. I brought all of that information, if you can imagine a lot of it, to the doorstep here. Then I looked at all of what we got in Kempo there, brought these two things together and looked at them and said, now I've really got myself in a fix. You know, how am I going to do this? 3 years. It took me 3 years to bring these things together. And to figure out, in that world, what should we know? What do we have to know in Kempo? What do we have to know to be able to survive that? Not to beat a jiu-jitsu guy on the ground, because I'm not going to do that. The question is, how can I survive him, get on my feet, and use my Kempo again? That's what I want. If I stand in a fight with somebody and I'm here like this, just by the way I'm standing and how big I am, if he's an MMA guy, he's going to go, I'm not going to stand up and fight this guy, I'm going to take him to the ground. Because I look like I know what I'm doing. So what's he going to do? Take me to the ground. Don't ever think he won't, he will. When I first started this, a lot of feedback, negative feedback from the Kempo world was, they'll never take me down. You know, I'll poke him in the eye, I'll knee him in the face, I'll do this, I'll do that. Okay, now that finally faded away into the distance. The question isn't, are you going to go down? The question is, what are you going to do when you're down there? And we finally had to stop and look in the mirror and say, I don't know. I don't have an answer. Okay. Nobody was doing anything about it, so I went out and did something about it. And this is what 5.0 Kempo is. Now, the last thing I'll say is, the reason I took out the word karate and put something in its place, I knew I was going to do that. Because ever since Mr. Parker died, the Kempo world's been doing this. Because everybody's wearing rank, and nobody, it's just a mess out there. Now, it's not a mess in here, you guys are who you are. But you're painted with the same brush as the other people out there who are selling rank and giving rank and walking all over our art. So I created something else. I thought about calling it Kempo MMA. That might work, because that really is what we're doing, except then I'd get all the MMA guys walking in off the street, and I don't want them. I don't want that energy in my dojo. So I wasn't going to do MMA. I thought about a bunch of different things, and then I thought, well, we were doing 4.0 Kempo right before, so I'm going to call this Kempo 5.0, and I went, there it is. That's our tag. That's our number. What I accomplished by intention is, I got a world over here that has not been treaded on. There's a pristine environment over here that we can all be proud of. That the price of admission is integrity. That everybody can do it. That it's back to what it always was. Old school, basics first, numbers of years training. Fine. Every stripe on this belt is a test. No promotion. I got in line with all my black belts every year in Las Vegas, and I tested with all of them. 2004 was 7, and 2010 was 8. Now, I don't think I'm going to make it for 9th. That's a different story, but I made it this far. But that's important to me. And it's important to everybody who studies with me because it legitimizes who we are and what we do. Because you've got to walk the walk. You have to be what you wear around your waist all the time. And I don't care what martial art you're in. If I walk into one of my places and somebody's got a 3rd-degree black belt on, and I walk in cold, they don't know I'm going, I say, come on up here and let me see Form 6, which is your required form. If you don't know it, take off the belt. Take it off right now. Put on a plain black belt. That's okay. Just put on with no stripes. But when you start putting stripes, you start telling me what you know, and then you better know it, or out you go. That's the environment that I've created over here. No more of the over-commercialization and the selling of black belts, which is rampant throughout the world. We're over here, we got a safe haven. Now, I think maybe Mr. Parker's last quote before he died, I'm not sure it's one of his last, maybe you've seen it on the internet. It says, when I go, I hope no one traditionalizes my art. And always remember that Kempo is the art of perpetual change. And then later in that next paragraph, now I'm paraphrasing a little bit, he says, the meaningfulness of one's life is determined by the contributions they make to others. So that was his wisdom. When you read any of his writings, he always talks about evolution and change. And, as you know, there's groups of other Kempo guys who have changed the art for their reasons. I changed the art because we need to know how to fight on the ground. So, the evolution of 4.0 into 5.0 is, first, obviously, we include ground fighting in everything we do. Second, I took all of the techniques in all of the belt levels and restructured and reorganized them so they now fit together under a thing called combat models instead of the web of knowledge. Because what I've learned throughout the years is the most important principle that we have after you learn the basic principles, point of origin, marriage of gravity, directional harmony, on and on and on. Once you learn all those, what's the most important thing for you to be able to do Kempo out there? Grafting. Being able to take a piece of this technique and a piece of that technique and put it together and have no break in your flow of motion. Would you agree with that? Okay, if that's so important, then my question became, when I was in my dojo and I had everything spread out like that, looking at the 4.0 syllabus, then why is shielding hammer here and 5 swords is in another belt? And raining claws over here? Why are those things spread out over a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years of your training? If grafting is the most important principle for out there in the street, why do we have it as some kind of weird esoteric idea that after so many years your instructor teaches you shielding hammer and 5 swords, and now 2 years later you do raining claw. He says, oh, by the way, you remember shielding hammer, right? Yeah, that's for the left, isn't it? Right, remember 5 swords? Yeah, sure, that's for the right. Okay, put them together. Okay, now after you do that, try shielding hammer, throw the left, now throw a right uppercut, and there's raining claw. And you go, wow, that's great. You mean those techniques are meant to go together? And you, the instructor, you go, yeah. And then they go, you mean there's other techniques that are supposed to go together? Of course. In fact, the whole system fits together like that. They go, oh my God, that's amazing. Because it really is amazing. Okay, then why isn't it spread out like that? So we reorganized the structure. Took shielding hammer and 5 swords and raining claw and glancing wing. I'll show you that a little bit later. It fits under this. Put them together, 1, 2, 3, 4. They become a combat model. They fit as a default mechanism from one to the next and the next. And those are the last 4 of Orange Belt. Every belt has at least one combat model in it. It makes it easier to learn, makes it easier for you to retain the information for your students, and it makes it easier to teach. Because now you're going to go, okay, here's an idea. Here's a guy who throws a left punch. Here's how you do shielding hammer. Okay, now let's stay with that idea. Same guy, he throws a right cross. Same guy throws an uppercut. Same guy throws a left uppercut. How from one stance can I answer those 4 questions? And that's what brings this together. So the people who are learning the 5.0 syllabus are learning that these techniques are meant to be grouped together and are taught together because that's what you're going to have to deal with out in the street. The guy throws a left and you go to break his nose and shielding hammer, and he's faster than you think and he throws a right and you default to 5 swords. Right? Isn't that how you know how to do it? Okay, then why don't we train like that? Why don't we have a system that's set up like that? Parting wings. You all know parting wings, yes? 2-hand push, right? And then we have thrusting wedge. You all know that. High attempted, and you go forward and into your thrusting wedge and poke to the eyes, correct? Yes? We all are using the same names, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so those 2 techniques belong together. Parting wings happens. Can I have this stuff out here for just a second? Parting wings happens because I'm this close. This is why I do parting wings. You push me in the chest, and I step back. Why did I step back? I had to, because he pushed me. So that's called purposeful compliance, right? It's borrowed force. So that's essentially, again, the same thing. We're too close. I'm too close to be able to detect what he's doing. I get hit. So I default automatically to this. But now I'm in a different depth zone. I have the same guy. He now comes in to do the same thing, and as he comes in, now I go forward in the thrusting wedge. So essentially, the attack is the same thing. What's different? The depth zone away from my opponent to me. So those 2 techniques, they're meant to be together to teach the principle of how distance and range affects what technique I pick for the environment, for this guy. Good lesson? Yes. Brilliant? You bet. Classic Ed Parker. That's what the whole system's about. But we didn't have the system organized, thank you. Didn't have the system organized and structured in that way we do now. So it's fighting on the ground. It's the restructuring of the syllabus. And then this is the hard part. About 1/3 of the techniques were taken out to create room for brand new techniques to fit in. So now that was the hard part. And this is where I still receive a lot of, and maybe justified, criticism. Okay, somebody had to take an axe and go like that. Because 40 or 50 years ago, when some of those techniques were created, this world that we're living in now, the world of the MMA fighter, let's call it, that world didn't exist. So you could do charging ram, or intercepting the ram, against the guy that was coming in for a, quote, low tackle, right? That's what that was. What's a low tackle today? A shoot fighter. A jiu-jitsu guy shooting in to grab control of your hips to take you down and mount on top and just beat the snot out of you and then grab your arm and break it. That's what he's trying to do. If you try to do charging ram to an MMA guy, you're giving him exactly what he wants to make his technique work. Now, that meant that, as great as that technique was, it doesn't work today. Not for the fighter we're facing today. When I chose, or the way I like to say it is, I had to give myself permission to go in and try to evolve the art. Once I did that, I started asking the tough questions. How does that work, and if it doesn't, should it be there? And the answer on that technique is no. Locking horns, the same one. You go to do this on locking horns, you're done. He's going to snap your neck, you're going to be out by the time you hit the ground. So when I teach those techniques in the seminar, I start with this. I say, look, here is locking horns 5.0. And I teach that and why. And then I step back and I say, look at 5.0 and 4.0. Here's why I did it, here's what the difference is. Now, lots of people out there don't like me, and maybe you're one of them. They're all on the internet. Just go read them. I don't read it, so you go ahead. Yes.
Just something to be trolled. So,
if you don't like what that is, I tell them, then okay, don't teach it. Change it, make it something else. But don't do that anymore. Because if you teach that to somebody that goes out against an MMA fighter, you're just serving your bum up on a plate and say, here, take whatever you want. Here's my wallet, here's my keys, and here's my gym shoes. Just help yourself. So, difficult decisions to make? You bet. Because it makes you feel like you're questioning the art, questioning what Mr. Parker... But I'm not. I'm not. I'm doing exactly what Ed Parker did, and exactly what he wanted all of us to do, evolve and change. The other people who have evolved the art in the way that they have, good on you for that. Maybe they did it for good reasons. Maybe they did it because they wanted to wear a 10th degree black belt. I don't know. What's their motivation? Go ask them. I'm telling you that my motivation for changing the art is because we need to do this. We need to learn at least essentially how to get out of trouble down there and get back on my feet. So, and the last part of it is, now, there's another system of point fighting called 5.0 Fighter, where it looks like a light face, full contact MMA fight with uniforms, with headgear, with 6-ounce MMA gloves. So they're wearing a uniform. 2-minute continuous fighting round, stand up and on the ground, nobody breaks, point scoring. Once you're in your weight class and in your group, you come up. When I know who my opponent is, we take our belts off. I put on a red belt, you put on a blue belt, and we face each other. So 4th down, 8th down doesn't mean anything anymore. We're in the same fight category. Judge in that corner, one in this corner, with a blue clicker and a red clicker. And they're just banging away. There is no break. Now think about this. You do a flying back knuckle in a tournament, and you practice how to do those, and boom, and you're great at it, and you're scoring points all the time. The guy on the receiving end of that steps back, and you score your point, he goes boom, boom, right under your ribs. He gets nothing. The guy that throws a suicide back knuckle gets 1 point. The guy that does the right move gets 0 points. That is not Kempo. You've got to stop doing your Kempo and come over here and do competition fighting. You've got to teach your students to do that. Don't you have separate classes, seminars? Because we're going to have a tournament. What is it you're really saying when you have that class? Okay, stop doing everything I've been teaching here for the last couple of years. Now do this. That is incongruent. What if we had a system of fighting where you don't have to do that anymore? You're going to step up and you're going to say, with small limitations, you're going to do in the fight what you do in the Kempo. It's going to be exactly the same thing. Wouldn't that be great? And that's what we've got. So if you go to jeffspeakman.com, you can read the rules and regulations, and there's 2 videos on there showing 2 guys fighting and how the scoring and all that goes. Have a look and tell me what you think. Okay? We've been doing this for 6 years in Australia and New Zealand. Now in the U.S., been with great success. If you're a brown or black belt, it's 2 2-minute rounds with a 30-second rest. Center ref scores no points while you're standing up. He only runs the fight. When the fighters go to the ground, the 2 corner judges do not score any points. Only the center judge awards points. That's it. You can strike on the ground with the same limitations, the same rules as when you're standing up, but your ground striking doesn't get you any points. But you can strike. The groin is a full contact target, the way it always used to be. Rear leg sweeps. Leg kicks with power, that's a point, as long as it's with the joint, not against. You can do all that stuff on the ground. You're not going to get points for striking, but those are positioning strikes to get your opponent to react so you can sweep around and try to get him in a choke or an armbar. Now here's the last thing I'll say about the 5-0 fighting. Two guys are down on the ground. One's really good in jiu-jitsu. He does his move. He gets over here. He scores 2 points there. He gets 2 points here. Slips around. Gets the guy in the armbar, and the guy taps. Break. Stand him up. The guy that got him in the armbar gets 3 points. Ready? Fight. A tap out is no longer the end of the fight. So you tap. Okay? You stand up. That's 3 points. That's the only time it's 3 points for a tap, and you keep fighting. So the other great thing is neither one of the judges have any idea who's winning. They really don't, because they're over here banging away like this. Then all of a sudden, time. Call the judges over by the score, and the first time they know who won is when they go like this. And look, they might have an idea, but there would be scores like 32 to 28, 34 to 33. Really close fighting. 1 point for every score standing up. 2 points for every jiu-jitsu move on the ground, and 3 points for a tap-out. Now, if you look at the 5-0 system and you see all the techniques and everything on the ground, and then you look at the 5-0 fighter, you're going to see a direct continuity. I no longer turn to my students and say, forget everything I've told you for the last 5 years, now come over here and do this. Why? For a trophy? For a tournament? That's ego. That's just something for me to parade around with. Wouldn't it be great if you could earn that trophy, be a part of the competition world, but be completely consistent with the Kempo that you've been doing all your life? That's what we're trying to achieve here in the 5-0. So before I do some techniques, questions or comments? I couldn't possibly have explained it that well. It's just not possible.
When you say you've taken some of the techniques out of the system,
yes,
are you reblending them back in somewhere else?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I meant to include that. The answer is yes, in their essence. May I give you an example? That would show. In fact, let's have that be our opening technique, okay?
Already got one.
This guy likes you, yeah. Okay, give me a left fighting stance. Left. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so here's my attacker. I'm going to show you reversing mace 5-0. I'm going to show you why it's different. And in the reversing mace 5-0, you're going to see the great stuff that's in repeating mace. But in repeating mace, I've got to take my hand and come to the other width zone to do this, right? This is not going to happen if he's fast. But you'll see repeating mace in reversing mace as an example of how I kept the value of a technique and added it to another technique where it fits. So first, I see this guy as a fighter, just about how he's standing. I got 2 things I can do. I can do this, or I can do this. That's it. I got probably 60 plus techniques in the 5-0 system that fit from here or from here. All the techniques you got... I'm sorry to keep talking.
No, you're good.
All the techniques you know that are to the outside of a right, just give me right straight. All these techniques you know that are here, gathering clouds and the dance of death and thunder, hammers and sleeper and all that stuff, they all now come from a left jab, right cross. We have no static techniques anymore. The only static techniques we have are the control manipulation techniques. You grab me, I grab you, lung kimono, right push, pull, parting wings, Those are the static ones. All the other techniques are now come from a fight model. They come from a spontaneous model. So, I've got 2 choices here, which is where I would use gathering clouds, parting wings, thundering hammer, sleeper, dance of death, all those to the outside of the right. And then I got here, which is where I'm going to go over here and try to get, that was to the inside, get to the outside of his left. That's reversing mace, which brings us into a combat model where there are 5 other techniques where I take him down from the back. So reversing mace is seen as the lead technique in a combat model that allows me to take variations of reversing mace, all grouped together to teach that concept of a model. So what's interesting here is I hit a right, I close this off so he doesn't see a line open, and I take my right hand and I drop it off over here. I'm trying to hide it underneath this arm a little bit. So it's over here, so when he throws his left, my move is here. I'll parry in a slight step, come around, check at the elbow, then shift to a forward bow and stick your thumb in his eye. Then when I move up the circle, here it comes, I descend with a hammer fist here, rebound back knuckle, lift with a leg kick. So we changed reversing mace because the way forward, please, watch, was this, yes? The problem with that is, if this guy's throwing a punch, if he doesn't throw just a straight locking punch, if he actually pops a jab, then when I come back with my back knuckle, he's blocked it. Now, can I go on from? Of course you can go on from there. But what's going to happen? His right's going to come. Because if he's got enough in him to throw a left, he's going to throw a right. And a kick. And the kitchen sink. And he's going to take my wallet and go have dinner. So I got to cancel that. There's too much of a risk. So you can say, well, I could have kept 4-0 because when you do the parry, it's meant to straighten the arm to give you that line of entry. Right? It's meant to do that. But what if it doesn't? What are the chances now that the guy I'm facing in the street is a much, much more educated fighter than the guy that does this or this? They don't do that anymore. They do this. They do this. That's the guy we're facing. So you better have your art work against that guy. That's why, now a little slower, when I come here, I go up high over the top and try to stick my thumb in his eye. I know I'm going to get that. So I try to extend the arm, I check it at the elbow like I'm supposed to, now I go with the top, turn to a forward bow, and stick my thumb in his eye, move up this circle, hit that kick to the leg, drag up, and there's my side kick to the opposite leg, and then it sets me up perfectly for my extension. Right? So did that answer your question? So I did the best I could to take the value of any of those techniques that I was taking out and find a place to plug them back in over here. Did I do it? I don't know.
The three techniques you used there are basically reverse mace, repeat mace, the circles of destruction.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's because it starts like circles of destruction, yeah. Right, precisely. So all we did at the beginning was I took that foot. I want to move more like a fighter. I want to move this way. I want to do things that are more. My students who fight in the ring, who fight in MMA competition, they do kempo techniques right in the ring, and they should be able to do that, in my opinion. Now, let me follow this, if I may. We'll go to another technique, but we're going to stay in this combat model. I'm intentionally going to take this guy down. Let me explain about that for a second. Because earlier I got through saying, I don't want to fight on the ground. I want to fight standing up. That's true. So why do I have techniques where I take him to the ground? And the answer is because I want you to know what it's like. I want you to know, what is this guy doing when all of a sudden you feel, how am I going to know what you're doing? When I learn what you do. That's all there is to it. I got to learn your world and mix your world with mine. So here's a takedown, same attack. So I'm up over here and I hit, and I move up the circle and I hit down with a hammer fist to cancel his height zone to eliminate the line of entry. Now instead of that, when I drop and I hit, I go down on my right knee. I trap his ankle and I take him down this way. Now I elbow him in the spine, come around and sew in, and I bring my right hand underneath, and I grab a hold of the far side of his coat. Come underneath and trap the arm. And now when I'm ready, I hop off, position myself here, and tap when you feel it. So that technique is called destructive knee. It's one of those 45 or so techniques that we call the 5-0 techniques because they don't exist in 4-0. But I've got my knee on the pressure on his kidney and just off his spine. I had a cross choke going here. I had this arm trapped, and all I'm doing is this. crack in his back if I need to, choke him out all the way. So now I know what it's like. Now watch this. If I'm fighting now an MMA or jiu-jitsu guy, and I'm lucky enough to do that takedown and get away with it, not sure I'm going to beat out, but okay, let's say I get away with it. There is no way that even a white belt in jiu-jitsu is going to let me take his back like that. He's not going to let that happen because he knows if I get your back, the chances you getting out of it conscious are really small. Can you get out? Yes. I can show you some reverses and releases for a rear naked choke, but it's not pretty. You'll never want one of these guys to be around behind you and sink in a rear naked choke. You're in big trouble. So he's never going to let that happen. So, let's go slow here. So we say we start the same way, and I poke him in the eye, and I hit here, and I do take him down, but as I come around, he comes over on his side, no, other way, and put me in a headlock. Okay, now I'm here. Now the question is, how do I get out of here? Now, why would he do this to me if he's a jiu-jitsu guy? Because if he can, see this hand here? If he can keep this hand in, then he can roll me and wind up inside control. So easy. In about 1 second, he can flip me. Go ahead and lay down and go. He can roll me, and I was inside control a minute ago, which is a really dominant position. And just like that, he's inside control, and I'm on the bottom fighting for my life. This is the perfect example of what I mean. If you don't know what a jiu-jitsu guy is trying to do when he gets me in a side headlock, if you don't know that move, you will know that move when it's too late. Now you're fighting for your life. This guy who's a jiu-jitsu guy, how do I know that? He just swept me like that. Now I got a jiu-jitsu guy who's inside control on top of me. Once again, it's the wallet and the keys and the gym shoes. It's not going to be easy to get out of that once he gets in that position. So this technique now, check your side a little bit, put me in that headlock. First, let me turn this way. Okay. First thing I do is I post this hand because it checks his ability to sweep me that way. Second thing I do is bring this hand up and heel palm the side of his head, come around, keep my hand there, and knee him in the back of the neck. Okay, now I've done some damage, and I'm still in a good position. Now I'm getting ready to effect my release and my finish. So I shift, throw my leg over, tuck it in tight, and bring your hand up and hang on to your other hand. And now I'm going to go for the release. I take my bone of my right hand on the nerve behind his jaw and push. Now he's released. And see how I got his hand trapped? Now I check this arm. I come inside, around, and down, and now I got him in a crucifix. And now I'm going to give it to him. How many times? How pissed off are you? What did he do to get you in this position? So if I can get you here, in this which is called a crucifix. Now, his left hand is open up here. Can he do stuff with it? Sure. He can hit me in the back, he can hit me in the kidney, he can grab my hair, he can do all that stuff. But I'm going to give it to him. He's going to do nothing but piss me off. So then I pump a couple into his face with my shoulders. Now I trap his arm as I come up, move him over, flatten him out. There's my arm break, kick, sweep, tempo. Take him to the ground. So you see that evolution? We start with a 5-0 version of reversing mace. I explained to you why I changed it. I explained how I took another technique similar and brought the guts of it and infused it. Then we took it one step further, how I took him to the ground. Then I'm going to start looking at the variables of what he could do if he's a jiu-jitsu fighter on the ground, and how do I counter that? That's what a combat model is. You create the problem and you create a solution. A problem, solution, problem, solution. You get everybody thinking that way, because that's what this art is. You'll learn the principles and physics of how you move. And then you go out there and you do that with all these techniques. You learn the techniques as a way to express how to move. That's it. In my opinion, that's what this is. That's the gift of the art of Kempo. If I'm just teaching you techniques, if when we're doing a test I'm just calling techniques and I don't ask you about the principles and the concepts, I don't muddy the water, I don't make it difficult for you, then what am I doing? Just teaching the fight. When I teach you the principles and I teach you how to think and I teach you how to problem solve, I make your life better. I'm teaching you the art, and that is my job, to give you the gift of the art of Kempo. It's my job to take it from me and give it to you. It is not my job to impress you with who I am so that you do this and you join my association and then you pay me all this money and I put more stripes on my belt. That's the ego trip. I do not care. I make my money in the movies, so I can afford to be honest. And this is why people don't like me. Because I get up there and I say it the way it is. I think you do that too, don't you? Somebody told me that, I don't know.
I tell you, it's a job getting money out of me. I was in Fair City. I just like the TV.
Okay, so I want to show you now the other side of that equation, because often when I teach a seminar, I'll teach this outside technique stuff here, and then I'll go teach the inside technique stuff. So we'll do the inside. So this combat model starts with shielding hammer. So I'm going to have right to left. I'm going to close this line so when you're looking at it you don't see a line. And I'm not going to do this. I'm going to drop this hand inside now. Remember last time I went outside. So the difference is when I do reversing mace in that combat model, it's an outside. When I do shielding hammer and that combat model, which is 5 swords, raining claw, glancing wing, I drop inside. Now he comes in with the left, and I shuffle and go back. I parry first and drop into my block. This hand's lined up right against that. As soon as that foot hits, I push, strike, shuffle in, and do a hammer fist across the nose. Turn the head, manipulate the depth zone, and cancel the right punch. That's what shielding hammer does. And break his nose in the process. Drop and bring him down with an elbow to the sternum. Now the open triangle. 2 fingers right into the eye as I rebound off myself and turn in. Back knuckle to the ribs. Now I come, see how my shoulders turned in? Now watch when they turn out. I get an elbow and then a hammer fist down to the groin, and then I cover out. That's our shielding hammer from 5-0. So the punch from him, see, it's coming from a guy who's a fighter. And the punch for shielding hammer is a left straight jab. It is no longer this. 5 swords is no longer this. This is shielding hammer. This is 5 swords. This is raining claw. You see that? All those come from a guy with his left foot forward who's a fighter and he's going to throw straight line punches. Make your techniques work against the straight punch, because then when the idiot does this, hey, I can get that. But if you think this guy's going to be an idiot and do this, and he does that, and you go for the wrong block, boom, you're going to eat it. So default your techniques to work against a fighter, and then when I face an idiot, great, I'll take that guy. Do the reverse. Work your techniques for the idiot, and now fight a fighter. How much trouble do you think you're going to be in? A lot. So, left straight. That's shielding hammer. Break the nose down. Hit, boom. Cover out. That's shielding hammer 5 swords. Shielding hammer 5-0. Now 5 swords. Same punch. Now it follows with the right. Block. Now I do my regular 5 swords. Now there's 5 swords. As a default from shielding hammer. So I say, I do 5 swords because I screwed up shielding hammer. I didn't break your nose and hit it fast enough. It gave you a chance to throw right. Okay? Now I'll do the technique that's made for that. Raining claw. Same left punch and throws a right uppercut. There's raining claw. Glancing wing. He throws this left, now the straight right, and now the left uppercut. Oh. And there's glancing wing. 4 techniques, all from this guide. They all come from a fight. Not, I don't stand here while you throw your punch or shielding hammer. I see this guide, I make a choice. Right leg forward, inside technique or outside technique. There's all the things that can go wrong with it. We learn them right now. I go to the outside. Here's the things that can go wrong with it. I do that right now. So that's the information that you're passing on to your students. Imagine that. You're dealing with a whole list of problems and solutions. You're creating a thinking martial artist that will break all that down. And that's, so I modified shielding hammer and 5 swords. This is your shielding hammer and 5 swords, isn't it? You do this. The only thing you don't do is you don't do them together. This is what I mean when I say I restructured the syllabus based around combat models, not around the web of knowledge. Good? Thank you.